Hello everyone, welcome back to the series of Pandas. In this video we will discuss on selecting or accessing a column, selecting or accessing a subset from a data frame using rows or column names, obtaining a subset or slice from a data frame using rows or column numeric index or position, selecting or accessing individual values, assigning or modifying data values in data frame, adding and deleting columns in data frame, deleting columns, iterating over a data frame. So let's get started with selecting or accessing a column. In order to select or access a column, you need to follow this particular syntax. You need to pass or you need to use the data frame object along with the column name, or you need to pass the column name within the square brackets. As you can see, this is the square brackets. Within the square brackets, you need to pass the column name in order to access the column. So just ignore this angular brackets. These angular brackets are not necessary or not the part of the syntax. In order to highlight the column name, we have used this angular brackets. So you can pass the column name either by using the square brackets or by using the dot notation. But there is a difference between the square brackets and the dot notation. And the difference is that if you use the square bracket notation, you have to use the double quotes. Let's say the column name is usually a string. So in order to use the column name, we have to use the quotation mark, since it is a string type. But if we use the dot notation, we need not to use the quotation marks. We can simply write the column name. So let's understand this better with an example. Here is once again the COVID-19 data. So this is one of the updated data that we have. What we need to do is, this is the data frame object, as you can see. So what we'll do is, we will simply access the column. Let's say we need to access the country column. So in order to access the country column, what we can do is, we can simply pass the name of the column over here. We can directly access the country. Let's run this program. You can carefully observe the output. As you can see, only the list of countries gets printed over here. The same thing can be done also with the dot notation. In order to do the same thing with the dot notation, just remove the square brackets and quotes and use the dot notation after the data frame. So this can be done as follows. You can just simply remove the entire thing, use the dot notation and simply type the column name. So in this case, the column name is country. So let's execute the code. As you can see, the same output gets printed. So this was all about selecting or accessing a column. In the next example, we will learn how to select or access a subset from a data frame using rows or column name. So now we will try to access a subset from a data frame. So in order to access a subset from a data frame, we need to follow the following syntax. So in this syntax, what it does, it uses the data frame object along with the LOC array. So the LOC array accepts two parameters, that is the start row and end row as the first parameter. This is a range array. So here we will mention the start row, and after the column we will mention the end row, and after the comma we will mention the start column along with the end column. So this is once again the range. So this decides the range of the row and this decides the range of the column. So in order to understand this syntax better, let's go through an example. Let us try to get this subset from this data frame. But before getting the subset from this data frame, what I will do is, I will print the data, the entire data frame, and I will show the data such that you can understand this example in a better way. You can go through the data. Here we have country column, we have total number of cases column, we have death column, and we have recovered column. Let's say I need to access the row ranging from 0 to 1 and this two columns, let's say country and total number of cases. So what I need to do is, I need to use the LOC array. So I will use the LOC array, and within the LOC array, in the first case I will pass the row range, and the second case I will pass, or the second parameter that I will pass, is the column range. So let's pass the row range. In this case, the row range will start from 0 to 1. 0:1 is the first parameter that I have passed, and in order to get the column range, what I will do is, I will pass the column. In this case, I will pass this range from country to total number of cases. As you can see, I have passed two parameters. The first parameter is the row range and the second parameter is the column range. So let's print the data and see what the output is. As you can see, we can get the subset of the data on the basis of the row range and the column range. So in the next example, we will try to access a row. So in order to access a row, we need to follow this particular syntax, that is data frame object with .loc array with the row label. So in this data, as you can see, or in this data frame, as you can see, we have row label as 0, 1. So let's print this entire data frame, then the scenario will be more clear. So as I execute this code, you can see the row label to be as 0, 1, 2 and 3. So if I need to access the row label, what I need to do is I need to pass this 0, 1 or 2, whatever the row label is, within this square bracket. So as I said earlier that the angular brackets need to be ignored, so I need to pass the row label here. So let's try to access a particular row. So in order to access a particular row, what I need to do is I will simply use this data frame object and I will use the dot operator and I will use loc array, and what I will do is I will simply pass the row label. So let's say the row label to be as 0. So if I need to access the data from the row label 0, what I will do is I will simply pass the row label 0 and I will pass a comma. So that means I need not pass much more parameters, as we know that loc accepts two parameters, that is row range and the column range. So here I won't be passing the second parameter, I will just pass the first parameter, that is a single row. That means I need to print a single row. So let's execute this code and see the output. As you can see, I get the output from the first row. So the first row gets printed, that is India, the total number of cases, death and recovery. So in order to understand this scenario much more better, so I will print the data frame along with this particular row. So in order to print this data frame, I will just simply use the data frame object so that you can understand better. So this is the data frame object. As you can see, in the first row we have the country India. In this part, what we have done is we have called only the first row, so the first row gets executed. I hope this is clear, so we can move to the next example. The next example, what we'll do is we'll try to access multiple rows. In order to access multiple rows, we need to follow this particular syntax. The only difference is that we need not to pass the second parameter. So this way we can access the multiple rows. We will pass the start row and we'll pass the end row, and we won't pass the second parameter, that is for the columns. So we won't pass the second parameter for the columns, we will just pass the parameter for the rows. We'll pass the range of the rows, that is the starting row and the ending row. So let's look into an example. So in order to print the first row and the second row, let's say I need to print row starting from 0 and need to print till 1. So what I need to do is I will simply pass 0 with 1. So this way I will get the output starting from the row range 0 to row range 1. Since we all know that these are the labels of the row, let's execute this code and understand it better. As we can see, we get the output of multiple rows. So this is the entire data frame and this is the subset of the data frame, which is this part, and we can see that we got the output of the row ranging from 0 to 1. I hope this is clear, so we can move to the next example. In the next example, what we'll do is we will try to select the range column or the column range. So in order to get the column range, the only difference from the previous example will be we won't be passing the first parameter, but instead we will be passing the second parameter, that is the column range. So what we'll do is we'll pass the starting column and we'll pass the ending column. So let's look into an example. So in this example, what we will do is we will print the data of column total number of cases to total number of death. So what we need to do is we need to put the first parameter to be as blanked. So in this case I will just put the colon, and for the second parameter I will just pass the range. So the range starts from total cases to total death. So the first column name is total cases to total death. Second column name is death. So what it will do is it will print the data ranging from total cases to death. So as soon as I execute the code, it will print the following data ranging from total cases to death. I hope this example is clear, so we can move to the next example. In the next example, what we'll do is we will use the index location number in order to print the data or to print the range of the data. So in this example, as you can see, we have used the ILOC array in order to print the range of the data. What it does, it takes the row index number as well as the column index number to print the data. The only difference is the ILOC array uses the index or the position value, whereas LOC array uses the index name or the position name. In order to understand this better, let's look at an example. In this example, as you can see, we have the concept of nested list. So in this nested list, what we have done is we have created 3 elements. All those 3 elements are the nested list. The first element contains element from 1 to 3, the second element contains element from 4 to 6, and the third element contains element from 7 to 9. So what we have done is we have stored this list in a data frame and we have printed that data frame. After the code gets executed, all those 3 elements get printed in 3 different rows. As you can see, all those 3 elements got executed in the 3 different rows: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This data frame doesn't have any row name or column name. So in order to get the range of the rows or in order to get the range of the columns, what we will do is we will use the ILOC or the index location. Let's look into this example. Print, I will use the data frame object name and I will use the ILOC array, and what I will do is I will start the range. Let's say if I need to start the range of the rows, I will start from 0 and I will end 2 so that I can get the values from 0 to 1. So 0, 2, and for columns I will do the same. I will start from 0 and I will go to 2. Let's say 0 to 2. At least I will get the values from 0 to 1. Now let's execute the code. So this is how the ILOC looks like. So this is the value of ILOC. You can see this is the original array, or this is the original data frame, and this is the ILOC or the subset, as you can see, and the range starts from 0 to 2. I hope this is clear. If this is clear, we can move to the next example. In this example, what we'll do is we will try to access the particular row with the help of a column with the help of dot notation. We have used the COVID-19 data once again, and we have used the data frame object df. So in order to access the particular row, let's say row number 0, what we have to do is we have to use the dot notation along with the column name, and we have to specify the row. Let's say I need to get the row 0, so I need to specify the row. Now let's execute the code and let's see the output. As we can see, we got the data as India. So in the row 0 of column country, we have the data India. I hope this is clear. If this is clear, we can move to the next example. In this section, we will try to manipulate the data of a data frame. So in order to manipulate the data of a data frame, we will follow this particular syntax. So this syntax says we need to use the data frame object along with the column name and the row label. So if we use this parameters and set the new value, the data of that particular column and the particular row will get changed. So let's try to do that. In this data frame, as you can see, I have the data of a country, total number of cases, death and recovery. So this is the COVID-19 data. Let's say if I need to make the death of India as 0. In order to change the death value from 29 to 0, I will do the following. I will use the data frame object. Here the data frame object is df, and I will use the column name. Here the column is death. So in order to access the column, I will use the dot notation. So I will type the column name. The column is death, and I will use the row 0. Since India is in row 0, I will put 0 here, and I will set the new value of death. So the new value of death becomes 0. So as soon as I print this data frame, the value of this death gets updated from 29 to 0, as you can see. So this is the old data frame which contains 29, and this is the new data frame, that is this part, which executes and sets the value from 29 to 0. As you can see, the death of 29 people got converted to 0. So this way we can manipulate the data in a data frame. But as you can see, whenever we execute this code, whenever we try to manipulate this code, we get this kind of error messages. So in order to avoid this kind of error messages, what we need to do is we need to call the copy function. So in order to use the copy function, what we have to do is you have to use the copy function along with this data frame. Just we need to use the dot notation and call the copy, and after that we can place our modification or place our arguments over here. So as soon as I run this code, you can see the error message gets wiped out. I hope this is clear. Looking forward towards the second syntax. As we can see, the second syntax uses .@array or .loc array for data modification or data manipulation. So let's move ahead and look for an example. As you can see, the data frame uses .@array and uses or sets the value 10 for the row 0. So in this case, the entire row will get converted to 0. Let's say the first row contains the values of India, the total number of cases, death and recoveries of India. So this entire data will get converted to 0. So let's execute the code and let's see the output of this code. As you can see, this is the original data frame. This contains the original data. So as soon as we set the value to 10, the entire row becomes 10. So this was all about the modification of data using the .@array. So we can do the same thing using .loc. I hope this is clear. Now let's move ahead and let us try to add an extra row to this data frame and also an extra column. So let us try to add an extra column in this data frame. So in order to add an extra column in this data frame, I will use this data frame object name along with the @array. So it will accept two parameters. The first parameter will be for rows. As of now, I'm not doing any changes with the rows, so I will pass the rows as empty. Since I'm adding only the column, I will pass the column name. Let's say the column name be dump, and the values that it will store is temp, temp. So this will store temp for entire data frame. Let's say if I need to store different values for the data frame, I need to put a list. I need to create a list, and I need to enter at least 3 or 4 elements in the list in order to store individual values for each and every rows. As of now, this temp will get stored for each and every rows. So let's run this code and see the output. Since I have not used the print, I won't be able to see the output. So you can see that dump column is storing temp. This is the extra column that we have added. So let us try to create an extra row. What I will do is I will simply remove this and I will put the row name. Let's say the row name is 4, and I will say that the row 4 will contain temp. So the entire row will contain temp over here. As you can see, I've added the extra row and the entire row contains temp. So this was all about modification of data of a data frame. So moving ahead, we will see how to delete data in a data frame. So this is the basic syntax to delete the data in a data frame. So in order to delete the data in a data frame, we will simply use the del command. So del, and what we'll do is we will use the data frame object name. Here the data frame object name is df. Let's say we need to delete the recovered column. So in order to delete the recovered column, what we'll do is we'll pass the column name. So the column name is recovered. It will delete that particular column. So let's print the data. As soon as you can see that the recovered column gets deleted using the del command. I hope this is clear. Now let's move ahead to our final example of this tutorial. Here we have two methods, iterate items and iterate rows. The iterate item traverses column by column as I have shown. As you can see, the traversing is done column by column, and the iterate rows traverses row by row as I have shown. So let us understand this with an example. In order to perform iterate item, what I need to do is I need to use for I in df.iterate items, and I need to print the I. As soon as I execute the code, you will see it will print the data column by column. So this is the first column data, this is the second column data, this is the third column data, and this is the fourth column data. As you can see, here we have four columns, and 4 columns of the data, the columns, each and every columns get executed. So let's check the iterate rows. In order to check the iterate rows, I need to remove the item and change it with rows. So what it will do is it will print the data row by row. So let's execute the code. As you can see, the first row gets printed, which is India. This is the first row which got printed. This is the second row which got printed. This is third row USA, and this is the fourth row. I hope this is clear. So I will explain the upcoming modules of data frame in my next video.